What happened today, fundamentally, that's a bit of housekeeping that Boris Johnson is doing, is that Labour shifted position on a general election. They did so because they felt unnerved and isolated as other opposition parties seemed to be making a step forward towards a December general election. They didn't want to look like they were scared, fundamentally. What we're waiting for now, it does look as though this election is going to happen, is a final agreement on the exact date. The 9th, 10th, 11th or 12th, all in play, but all the other areas of disagreement seem to have gone. The idea that the House of Lords, which this bill will have to go to, is going to stand in the way and say no general election, well, that really wouldn't be very good.
On a couple of days, yeah.
Wouldn't be very good for their optics as an unelected House. Extraordinary mood around here today. Very few people absolutely skipping. A couple of people I found cheerful. They happen to be the people who are leaving. One Tory MP I found very low. He has a Lib Dem facing seat and he was wandering around saying to any MP he met, nice knowing you. Awful lot of Labour MPs fuming about the leadership's decision to go for a December election, smoke coming out of their ears. What we now start is the Conservative strategy and whether that will be a success. And the strategy, of course, is to fuse these issues of Brexit and the public spending bonanza that's going to happen the other side of Brexit if you elect a Conservative majority government, they'll claim. That fusing, remember, that happened on the side of the bus in the referendum. Now they're going to try and pull that together again, and they hope hold on to some Remain voters because they've gone for a deal and not a no deal. They hope that will make them look responsible with them. Labour will be trying to prise those issues apart. Not just hold on to Remain voters, but hold on to some Leave voters and say we're the party, the true party of public spending that cares about the services out there. We're going to see all of that, but as you say, first the housekeeping here, a few more hours left here on this bill, and then it'll be out to the country. Here's how the last moments of this much unloved Parliament went today. An aide smartens him up for the big occasion. Labour backing a December general election.
Now then, guys, big cheer behind the pillar. Are we ready for this election campaign? Let's go out there and fight it now, OK?
This only one day after he rubbished the idea.
The 12th of December election is less than a fortnight before Christmas. In parts of this country, it'll be dark before 4 p.m. No general election has been held in December since 1923.
If it was a bad idea yesterday, I don't see why it's a good idea today. This is not the way to resolve Brexit.
The Labour leadership was spooked yesterday by the SNP and the Lib Dems looking keen on an election and Labour looking frightened. The ground shifted and Jeremy Corbyn told scores of reluctant Labour MPs it was time for an election.
You know what? The Labour Party loves a debate, but they also love the end of the debate. And this is the end of the debate and we're going out there to win, OK?
All the other parties, for various different reasons, have kind of sucked us into a black hole. I don't think it's entirely Jeremy Corbyn's fault, but I will be voting against a general election because there is no thirst for this amongst the public. I think what the public want is for us to solve their problems for them, to get Brexit sorted and then go back to them. Not to go to them first and say, could you solve our problems as a parliament?
Whether they're thirsty for it or not, voters are about to get a contest. In the Commons today, the two main party leaders laid out their stalls.
And there is only one way to get Brexit done in the face of this unrelenting parliamentary obstructionism. This endless, willful, fingers crossed, not me gov refusal to deliver on the mandate of the people, and that is, Mr. Speaker, to refresh this Parliament and give the people a choice.
There is an alternative to austerity. There is an alternative to inequality. There is an alternative to sweetheart trade deals with Donald Trump. There is an alternative of a government that invests in all parts of the country, and a government that's determined to end injustice in our society.
Jeremy Corbyn barely mentioned Brexit. Behind him, many stony-faced Labour MPs sat silently. They, like others, aware of how the polls have changed in recent times in the Tories' favour. After the last general election, the political party's conditions looked stable for many months.
But the first Brexit delay in March seemed to spasm support levels, the charts darting around, the Tories seeming to climb back to a lead under Boris Johnson. That doesn't stop unease amongst Tories who've still got the whip or lost it.
Say Prime Minister gets a majority, takes us out of the EU within 4 weeks. Of course, he will then get on with his own policies, but I think the rancour is going to remain for a very long time.
You'll live with that if he had those two prizes, won't he?
Well, he may do, but alternatively they may come back to haunt him. But I worry about the country's future a lot. I think the United Kingdom's future as a union is under very great threat.
Do you have a bit of nervousness that you'll be going to the electorate without Brexit having been done, saying vote Conservative to get Brexit done?
Well, yes, unfortunately it's a very similar sort of dynamic that we had in 2017. It's not quite there, you need to vote for us to get it there. I would personally have been more comfortable to have had this legislation through and then go to an election, because we've got a degree of a clean sheet. We know where we are and we can discuss the domestic agenda. So we'll have that Brexit dynamic looming very, very large over this election.
The polls suggest smaller parties could come back better represented after the election, which could make it harder for a majority government to be formed.
What nobody in this place can answer is what happens, how will it end if what is returned is another hung Parliament? Yes. Because we did not think we were going to be here before, and yet here we are.
A people's vote is more likely following another hung Parliament than it is in this hung Parliament.
It might come into its own.
Well, it's difficult to see how you can make the argument that the way to resolve the crisis is another general election if a December general election results in a hung Parliament.
That's not why Boris Johnson's pressing the button today, is it?
And Boris Johnson might be making a mistake.
Boris Johnson and his top advisor are gambling on a very different result. Many of their stratagems haven't worked. The October election they threatened, the long suspension of Parliament, avoiding the Brexit delay. A December election, they hope, could wipe those from memory and start a new chapter.
Gary Gibbon there. Well, joining me now is Laura Pidcock, the Labour MP and member of Jeremy Corbyn's shadow cabinet. Thanks for coming on the programme. So I think you tweeted earlier today about this election, bring it on.
Yeah, I was trying to be really succinct about the general election, but I really mean it. I feel enthusiastic. I feel
there are many people in your party who think the exact opposite.
I feel, well, it's not what I'm hearing. I've just been in the chamber, in the shadow cabinet. It was a resounding yes for a general election once we got that word that no deal was off the table. And I just feel like now is the chance to go back to the people, not just on Brexit. I'm not going to talk about Brexit for the whole of this general election campaign, but about every single domestic issue affecting my constituents and each nation.
But just to talk about no deal is still on the table. If the Prime Minister's deal passes, his withdrawal agreement, then next summer and at the end of next year, we could still have no deal if the trade negotiations with the EU don't go according to plan.
Well, it's all these hypothetical situations. We could talk about forever. Well, what is no deal? The definition of no deal that we have been working by is that we secured an extension so we don't crash out on the 31st of October. We then go to the people in a general election. The Labour Party being very clear about their position. I am really positive today because at last we get to go to the people with our radical agenda for change.
I love your enthusiasm, but at the same time, if you look at the opinion polls, they are pretty dismal for the Labour Party. But why not?
Well,
and also, you're facing an uphill struggle on an icy road in darkness in the middle of winter. It's not going to be easy, is it?
Well, I definitely need to invest in a warm coat and some sturdy shoes.
But this could be catastrophic for you.
But in all seriousness, they said this the last time, I do not think that this is the same kind of general election, but what will happen when we get into that space, when we walk through the lobbies tonight to vote for it, is that people will see the agenda that we have compared to more of the same with this Conservative government who, let's not forget, have taken us nearly into our 10th year of austerity.
But Boris Johnson is not Theresa May. He's a much more formidable campaigner and enemy for the Labour Party. And
he's even more fundamentalist.
He's got a Brexit deal on the table.
He's even more fundamentalist on austerity. He will give us more poverty, more in-work poverty. He will give us more food banks. You might say this is the Brexit election.
The country is saying this.
But no.
The issue has to be
You might
sorted
say
out.
this is the Brexit election, but people in my constituency care about hundreds of things, and it would be a dereliction of my duty to only talk about one policy area on a general election that will give a mandate for 5 years, that will actually set a policy direction for 50 years.
Now, Jeremy Corbyn looked happier this morning than I've seen him in months. Is that because he's homing in on the allotment of retirement, or because he thinks he's actually going to go to number 10?
Jeremy loves his allotment, but not more than he would love to get justice for working class people. So he looks very, very happy.
But he's not going to win.
Because finally, is that your prediction? Is that what you're saying?
I'm looking at the polls,
okay,
as are you.
So you are religiously believe in the polls. Polls change, people's minds change when they know what is at stake. Jeremy Corbyn can't wait to present our radical change-making agenda to the people. And this is going to be a pattern. People are going to tell us we can't win, the polls are not in our favour, and we are going to prove every single person wrong.
Okay, Laura Pidcock, thank you very much indeed. Okay, let's bring in my next guest. That is Bim Afellamy, Conservative Member of Parliament and a staunch supporter of the Prime Minister Boris Johnson. Bim Afellamy, thanks for coming on the programme. Be careful what you wish for, right? I mean, this is an election that you didn't need to hold right now. You got your withdrawal agreement in the second reading over the line with 30 votes, and you're in danger of throwing all that up in the air.
Well, nobody should take any election for granted. So in that sense, every MP needs to be nervous when going to see the boss, and the boss is the electorate. But in terms of whether we needed to hold it or not, I'm afraid this Parliament was not working. This government does not have a majority.
But it worked in the second reading for your Brexit bill.
In the second reading...
It worked, you got a majority of 30, that's historic.
I sat up watching how Labour MP after Labour MP said, I'm voting for second reading, but I'm not sure I'm going to vote at third reading. And the difficulty was this Prime Minister could not be sure of those votes at third reading because we do not have a majority. And in our system, if you don't have a majority, a government can't last very long. Yes. And that's why, reluctantly, we've been forced to seek an election.
But what you were afraid of was subjecting this withdrawal agreement to the kind of scrutiny it deserves in the time it deserves in this Parliament. That's why you pulled it.
I'm afraid that's really not true. When second reading debate happened, the Labour Party ran out of speakers. You know, these are the people that have been saying, oh, we need more scrutiny, we need more time. The last hour, they weren't even there. So I'm afraid it was their attempt to just dither and delay because they believe for political reasons that they wanted this to fail. And so that's why we have to go to the public.
As you know, Bim, elections are full of known unknowns and unknown unknowns. Theresa May started her campaign with a 22-point lead, and we all know what happened after that. You've got a 16-point lead, maybe a 14-point lead. What makes you so confident you won't get another hung parliament?
Well, I don't take anything for granted, but what I know about this Prime Minister is he is a formidable campaigner. When he won the Mayor of London, he started 20 points down. This is a government that set out a clear agenda around increased education funding, 20,000 police on the streets, NHS, huge increase in spending. And as I speak as somebody whose father's an NHS consultant, you know, these things really matter to people, in addition to Brexit.
Bim Afellamy, thank you very much indeed.